Welcome to my channel. I am Deborah Gray, a journalist covering a variety of global human rights issues, including but not limited to gender justice, climate change, health, and housing. Today, let's dive right into marriage equality. What is marriage equality? Marriage equality is when the same legal recognition is granted to a marriage between two non-heterosexual consenting adults as is granted to a marriage between two consenting heterosexual adults. Some people prefer to use the term same-sex marriage, but personally I find it to be a little trans-exclusive, which is why I prefer to use the term marriage equality. At the time of shooting this video, over 30 countries across the world have marriage equality. These include Australia, Brazil, Canada, Denmark, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, and the United States of America. At present, the Indian Supreme Court is listening to a batch of petitions demanding marriage equality. The petitioners say granting marriage equality would not only give them social recognition and respect, it will also help them access a variety of legal benefits which are only available to heterosexual married couples. These include the ability to open a joint bank account, the ability to nominate each other in insurance, in wills, etc. Now, before we go any further, let's take a quick look at the history of the movement to secure equal rights for India's thriving LGBTQIA+ community. For several decades, organizations, activists, and individuals have been demanding the repeal of Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. Section 377 is a relic of the past. It was originally introduced by the British when they colonized India. But even after the British left and India gained independence, this particular section was retained in the Indian Penal Code. What it effectively did was criminalize and dub as unnatural all non-procreatory sex. Now, one might wonder, heterosexual couples also engage in a lot of recreational sex or sexual activity that is not aimed at procreation. However, it was non-heterosexual couples who were targeted, harassed, bullied, and discriminated against using this offensive section. In September 2018, the Indian Supreme Court read down this section, effectively decriminalizing sex between two consenting adults. This landmark judgment therefore enabled the community to move forward with dignity and demand even more equal rights in other spheres of life, such as the right to get married. Several petitions demanding marriage equality were filed in courts across India. And in March 2023, the Indian Supreme Court clubbed them all together and decided that they will be heard by a constitution bench of the Supreme Court. Hearings began on the 18th of April 2023. However, there are several parties who are attempting to stonewall this quest for justice and equality. These include the Government of India, the Jamiyat Ulema-e-Hind, the Akhil Bharatiya Sant Samiti, and also, interestingly, the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights. Let us have a look at what they have said in the various affidavits that they have filed in the Supreme Court. First up is the Government of India, that has filed not one, but two affidavits before the Supreme Court. In the first affidavit, the Government of India refers to the Supreme Court's own words in the landmark Navdeep Singh Johar versus Union of India judgment of September 2018. I'm going to read the excerpt that the government has mentioned in the affidavit. It says, "There can be no doubt that an individual also has a right to a union under Article 21 of the Constitution. When we say union, we do not mean the union of marriage, though marriage is a union." The same affidavit goes on to say that same-sex marriages, and I quote, "are not comparable with the Indian family unit concept of a husband, wife, and children, which necessarily presuppose a biological man as husband, a biological woman as wife, and the children born out of a union between the two, who are reared by the biological man as father and the biological woman as mother." End quote. To me, this seems a little problematic because it appears to play into gender stereotypes and traditional gender roles. Now, let's move on to the second affidavit by the Government of India, where it is called the demand to legalize same-sex marriages, and I quote, an urban elitist view, end quote. This appears to suggest that the government thinks there are no LGBTQ plus people in rural India, which is strange because 70% of India is still rural. Moving on, the next group to oppose marriage equality is the Akhil Bharatiya Sant Samiti, who claim to represent 127 Hindu sects. In their affidavit, they say, and I quote, same-sex marriage is totally unnatural and disastrous to society, end quote. The next group to oppose same-sex marriages or marriage equality is the Jamiyat Ulema-e-Hind, an Islamic organization. In their application, they say, and I quote, same-sex marriage goes to attack the family system instead of making a family through this process, end quote. Now, this is again deeply rooted in the belief that the purpose of marriage is procreation. Now, to me, this is hugely problematic for two reasons. One, it assumes that same-sex couples cannot have biological children. That is not true. They can get a sperm donor, they can get a surrogate, they can definitely have biological children. And secondly, they can also adopt a child. But this is where we hit another hurdle, because the NCPCR, or the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, has also filed an affidavit opposing same-sex marriages and the adoption of children by same-sex couples. In their application, they say, and I quote, allowing adoption to same-sex couples is akin to endangering the child, end quote. It is also said that it would expose, and I quote, the child to struggle just for experimentation, end quote. Interestingly, the Delhi Commission for Protection of Child Rights has battled for adoption rights to be given to same-sex couples. It has said in its application, and I quote, multiple studies on same-sex parenting have demonstrated that same-sex couples can be good parents or not, in the same manner that heterosexual partners can be good parents or not, end quote. Meanwhile, the Indian Psychiatric Society has categorically said that homosexuality is not a disease. It had released a statement that I'm going to read to you now. I quote, all forms of treatment or therapy, including individual psychotherapies, behavior therapies like aversive conditioning, etc., hypnotherapy, group therapies, pharmacotherapy, physical treatment methods like ECT, etc., or milieu treatments to reverse sexual orientation are based on a premise that is erroneous, that such orientations are diseases, end quote. Moreover, the society has gone on to say, and I quote, no scientific evidence at all that attempts to convert a person's orientation succeeded in any manner. The Indian Psychiatric Society totally disapproves of any such treatments and urges that such therapies must cease forthwith. End quote. So now that you know what different parties are saying, you are free to make up your own mind. The case is still ongoing in the Supreme Court and I'll be making a series of videos, so stay tuned. Bye for now.